Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm here today with Doug, and we're going to be talking about his book, co-authored book, Developing Mental Toughness, Strategies to Improve Performance, Resilience, and Well-Being in Individuals and Organizations. Doug, this is one hell of a book. I learned so much on this. Before we dig in, tell people where they can find you.
Well, they can find me through LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook. Those are my two main channels. And through my email address. That's Doug, very simple, DOUG at AQR.co.uk.
And thank you for coming on, Doug, and sharing this. This is the third edition. And I'm gonna. It's a tour de force of knowledge about mental toughness, isn't it?
It is, and we're very proud of it. The first edition had 65,000 words. The second one, which followed fairly quickly afterwards, was 75,000. That's somewhere around 110,000 words. And if we wrote an update to that, because that came out 2 years ago, only 2.5 years ago, we'd probably add another 40 or 50,000 words, because we're very much the thought leaders for this topic.
Yes, and I can tell that from the book.
Thank you.
And the thing is it's research after, but not boring. This is the research.
Well, I'm quite fortunate because my two colleagues, Professor Peter Clough and now Associate Professor John Perry, are what you would call practitioner academics. So they're very down to earth. They're not theoretical academics. And I'm kind of a practitioner who pretends to be an academic. So we're able to kind of work together in that way, that we take what they do, their approach, their academic approach, their bias towards evidence, and we see what we find in all the research. And then the next step is to say, well, how would a practitioner, how would somebody in my world want to use this? And that's been our strategy and our approach from day one.
So you start off with kind of a history of mental toughness, don't you? We do. So you talk about the AQR stress model, psychometric testing, and even you talk about open and fixed mindsets.
We do. But actually the history goes back a way bit beyond that, because the first mention of this concept was actually Plato. He spoke about fortitude, one of his 4 virtues, and that was picked up by the Stoics. So mental toughness is, more common language would be stoicism or attitude. It's really, most people, when they're talking about attitude, they're actually talking about mental toughness. So it's that sort of an idea.
But we've always tried to try and, I suppose, compartmentalize isn't really the right word, because that's kind of like a negative word, but we've always, I've done Myers-Briggs. There's DISC, there's all kinds of things where what we're trying to do is work out and place us in compartments or somewhere on a square or whatever, a color or something,
I'm glad you picked that up, Tim, because that's an important part of our work. In the world of psychology, they talk about an idea called individual differences. And the idea is that we are all individuals. We're a unique mixture of qualities. And that's what we've been working on. So we are quite opposed to the idea of you're one of 4 colors or you're one of 16 types. There are 8 billion people on the planet. There are actually 8 billion different types. Now, that's a lot of complexity to get your head around. But what we've done, we think we've managed to strike a happy balance. We can work to a sufficient degree of detail with each person to understand exactly who they are, and therefore they can respond to that, they can develop, or they can learn to cope or whatever, without being too superficial. So the idea, we are plagued by black and white thinking because it's easy, and the worst people presenting it are practitioners as well. They're the curse of my life. You mentioned growth and fixed mindset.
I was going to say, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a great idea, and at that level, it's a nice idea. But what does it mean for an individual? Because what we know in our work is mental toughness has got 8 components. We call them 8 factors. And you can be mentally tough and mentally sensitive on each of those 8 factors. So there isn't such a thing as being wholly mentally tough or wholly mentally sensitive. There's no point describing you or me as mentally tough or mentally sensitive. We're a mixture of those. And it's once we understand that mixture and the sort of the individual aspects of it, then we can do something about it. And there's more and more research coming out to support that. And the reality is a lot of practitioners know that, but they still don't know what to do about it.
I think it's a lovely way to say you're either a fixed or open mindset, and it's nice to be able to say that you're green or red or something like that. But at the end of the day, as you say, we're all individuals, and I think that the feedback that I get always, whether it's Myers-Briggs, whether it's open or fixed mindsets, is, well, I'm kind of an introvert, but I'm also an extrovert, and sometimes I'm an open mindset, and sometimes a fixed mindset. And everybody sort of says and agrees we're not one or the other, or we're not. I'm trying to think what my Myers-Briggs is, but we are individuals.
We are, and it's important to understand exactly where we are as individuals. There is a difference here, of course. Everything you've mentioned is largely about behavior, and behavior is complex. We can behave in one place differently than another. I can easily behave differently at work than at home. My mindset, my mental toughness, my mental approach to an event will be the same. So if somebody's bugged me at home, it'll bug me at work as well if it happens at work. But I might behave differently.
Yeah.
I might lose it a little bit at home because I know I'm allowed to.
Yeah.
I won't lose it at work because I'll get into trouble. So my behavior turns out different, but actually what's happening up here is the same. And that's something important for people to understand.
In the book, you talk about your 4 C's model, don't you?
Yeah.
Which is control, commitment, challenge, and confidence. I'm just trying to find a diagram of it, and that's control. To put up.
That's right. That's the pizza image.
Talk us through your 4 C's model.
It is. Sorry?
Talk us through it.
Okay, so the 4 C's were the original 4 C's came from Professor Clough, who identified 4 big components of mental toughness, as you say: control, commitment, challenge, and confidence.
Yeah.
But in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's a continuous process, we have been able to identify that those 4 C's themselves have components. So we know that mental toughness consists of 8 factors. And the interesting thing about this, Tim, is, and this is genuine, 4 of those factors have not come from academia. They've come from practitioners. People coming to, so at one stage we only had commitment, and people were coming to us and saying, I've got somebody here who's scored quite high in commitment, but doesn't do it, doesn't finish jobs off. Or can you explain that? And we couldn't. So we had to go back and work that out. So we've been able to work it out. It's the same with challenge. People would go out and do things and then sort of try to forget about it. Well, why? So all of that impetus came from practitioners, and that's a big value to the model. So what we now know is that the 8 components are life control, that's a sense of can do; emotional control, that's where you manage your emotions; achievement orientation, which is whether you mind it to make the effort to do things; goal orientation, that's sort of about having purpose. Having purpose has risen to the top of the agenda in our world. So we can assess the extent to which you have purpose. And those 4 elements equate broadly to what people talk about as resilience. So mental toughness embraces resilience. It isn't resilience. Resilience is part of mental toughness. The other part is positivity. And that's picked up by the challenge and confidence construct. So there's risk orientation. That's about, how do I see the world that lies in front of me? do I see it's full of opportunity or is it full of threat? Next person sitting there alongside me can see the same thing, but will see it the other way around.
Yeah.
And then there's learning orientation. And for me, that's the beating heart of the whole concept. That's about when things happen, do I take time out to reflect on what's happened and do I learn from that? Because if I do, I make progress. If I don't, I keep repeating my mistakes. I get nowhere. And then there's the confidence bit that Peter Clough brought to the party, and that's about having confidence in your abilities. And that's a weird one because you can have people with a ton of ability who
Yes.
don't believe in their abilities.
Yes.
And we see that all the time. And sadly, of course, Tim, you see people with very little ability who think they've got stats.
We're very confident.
Yeah. Yes. And then the last one is interpersonal confidence. And that's something else that we have improved as a result of feedback from practitioners. Because originally we thought that's about assertiveness, getting your own way. It isn't. It's about being able to engage with the world around you comfortably with other people. So it's like one person will walk into a room full of strangers and will walk around the outside because they're not confident about making a connection with people. The next person will walk into the room, walk straight up to somebody, shake their hands and say, I'm Tim Hughes. How are you? And it's, you know, if you've got that ability to connect easily with other people, then you can share ideas with them, you can influence them, you can learn from them. They're all important qualities. But the interesting thing is that almost very few of us are entirely high on all of these qualities or entirely low on them. We tend to have a mixture of them.
Yeah.
And when we're mentally sensitive on a quality, most of the time we don't notice it, but at times it trips us up and we don't know why. We just know we've suddenly failed at something or can't do something we thought we should be able to do comfortably. So those are the 8 factors. And as I said, there are 40,000 combinations of those 8 factors at a base level. Actually, if you take into account different levels, there are millions of combinations.
It's really fascinating in terms of and you take us through it in terms of the different areas and walk us through and back it up with all of the various case studies you got here. And
the case studies are very powerful because practitioners relate to them. It's sometimes more difficult to relate to the research because it's quite hard to grasp. And some of the research methods, they are incredibly complicated. But what we do know is that 25% of the difference in performance between individuals can be accounted by differences in their level of mental toughness. So we know it matters for performance. We know it matters for well-being. We know it matters for agility. We've got all that evidence. But what we're also learning is a mentally tough person can still struggle and a mentally sensitive person can thrive. And that's the magic, because that means I can sit down with anybody and help them to be better at what they're doing. Literally anybody can improve.
So how do we bring that all together in terms of the practical application of it, especially around work and employability and mental toughness and links to physical and mental health?
Well, the big challenge in it, having discovered what it is how do we assess it in people?
Yeah.
And the great thing is that we've managed, John Perry is a driving force in this. We've been able to develop a high quality psychometric measure because it's invisible. I can't see inside your head, you can't see inside mine. But we've managed to create a reliable and valid psychometric measure that helps us to be able to understand your mental toughness profile. And if we have a discussion about that and we can get to a good understanding, we have then a base from which we can work, because we can identify what your areas of mental toughness might be, what your areas of mental sensitivity might be, and we work out the implications of that. That's where reflection matters, because that's really touching upon learning orientation again. So if somebody's done it to me and I think, wow, I've got a very high level of mental toughness here, and yes, I can see it gets me into trouble. I've got a low level of a level of mental sensitivity over here. I can see why that gets me into trouble. I then have two options, or two basic options. I can either decide to change, but that's hard because it's an aspect of your personality. It takes sustained effort, but it can be done, and people do it. Or I can learn how to cope with it. And in both cases, it's the same tools and techniques that help you. And you can either do it with individuals. The best practice is to somehow work with a coach or a mentor. But you can do it in workshops or in groups, and we're getting more practiced at working with teams and with groups of individuals, because you sometimes get them to share and support each other. That's the thing. When you really want to change something, it just takes so long to change that you need to get constant support all the time. Because if you say 35 years old, you've spent 35 years learning to think in one way, and I'm trying to change you in a couple of weeks, it can't be done. It takes often 2 or 3 months to be able to make a change that is sustained.
You work through it, a number of the chapters towards the end, don't you, about mental toughness and sport?
Yeah.
You pick a number of verticals where you work through those different, so there's sport, education, employability. Talk us through like mental toughness then in employability.
Okay, so employability is
put you on the spot, Doug. Come on, you wrote the book.
No, that's okay. Employability, I'm comfortable with that, because employability is different to career guidance. Career guidance is about, can I help Tim Hughes get the next job? And the one that he now wants a job that represents a promotion and more pay. I can help you to, prepare for that, write a CV and all the rest of it. Employability is about being valuable to a potential employer all your life. So it's understanding what it is that employers value. And what we've learned through some really big studies is the one thing that employers value most. The research, we started off by asking employers, literally over 500, how do you recruit people? And they said, on basis of qualifications, interviews, experience, and so on, and their knowledge. Okay, you've now got the person for 12 months. What is the most valuable quality that person's got? And the answer was always attitude. You can have a brilliant person, an incredibly well-qualified person. If they've got a lousy attitude, they're worthless. You can have a moderately good person, but if they've got a great attitude, they're your star employee. And so mental toughness, as I said earlier, equates broadly to attitude. So we can take those 4 components of mental toughness, or the 8 factors, and each one of them applies. So life control, that's the sense of can do. I love employees who've got a sense of can do, who don't hesitate. They say, yeah, just leave it with me, I'll get on with it. Or emotional control, they don't lose it when things go wrong. Or they understand your purpose, goal orientation, and so on. If you go around all 8 factors, you will see aspects of employability in each one of those. And it's a big growth area for us, especially in universities and business schools, because right now they are getting assessed on how effective they are at getting people into work, not just on what qualifications they get. The reputation largely rests on, if I go to such and such a university, what are my chances of getting a worthwhile job after going to that university? So
we've been doing some work with Cranfield, which is one of the top universities in the world, it's not just about turning up at lectures.
Yes,
it's about assessing: are people learning? Do people think it's applicable? Will they get a job?
Yeah, and it's got a big application in well-being, because to go from school or even a first degree to somewhere like Cranfield, it's quite a pressured program.
Yeah,
you have to do stuff. If you're given an assignment, you're only given a short period of time to do it, and you've got to get that assignment in by a certain day. You allow that to slip a little, and suddenly you feel under so much pressure.
Yeah.
If you can't deal with that, you got a problem.
Yeah.
And being self-aware about your mental toughness helps you to understand where your pressures, your sort of cool spots will be. And if you're smart, you'll develop coping mechanisms to be able to deal with it. You will perhaps buddy up with somebody that might help you to get something done in time or whatever. So the big mantra in our world is self-awareness.
Yes.
This is the invisible bit of me that either helps me to thrive or drown, And so if I can understand what it is about me that gets me into trouble from sometimes, then I can learn what to do about it. If I don't understand it, if I can't see it, then I'm never going to learn how to cope with it. So it's, for us, self-awareness is the big mantra.
And that's a great thing to finish on, Doug. It's the self-awareness, the secret source of mental toughness.
Yeah, it is.
So Doug, thank you so much. Love the book. Really enjoyed it. And I know it looks like a lot. Actually, there's a lot of diagrams, and there's a lot of. So it is 110,000 words or something, but it actually is it's an easy read as well. But it's a fantastic journey in terms of understanding about mental toughness, more than just open and closed mindsets.
Well, you made me want to go and read the book too.
And where can we find it, Doug? On Amazon worldwide?
Well, it's on Amazon, and if people can't find it on Amazon, they can get in touch with AQR International, and we've got copies too.
And where can people find you, Doug?
Doug at aqr.co.uk or head office at aqr.co.uk.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about mental toughness, Doug.
It's a pleasure, Tim.
It's just something that we all have got to learn, isn't it? Because we all need to be our best people. And whether you're leaders or whether you're an individual contributor, you've still got to be your best. Turn up and try and be the best person you can be.
I think so, and especially I've been reading recently, and I'm sure you have, about the potential impact of artificial intelligence being able to do away with a lot of our jobs. But will they be able to do away with all jobs? And will those jobs that remain require a degree of mental toughness, a degree of positivity, and a degree of resilience?
I think jobs will change because the job that I had when I was at school didn't exist.
Oh yeah, me too.
So I mean, this isn't something that's new.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about lots of things have changed and will continue to change.
So, but in 10 years' time, you and I might be avatars, maybe.
Maybe. Thanks, Doug. Really appreciate you coming on and chatting up to us.
It's been my pleasure.